Now, where are you?
We both in Southern California. We're both in the LA area.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm in
oh,
LA.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
So we're not far. We're not far.
yeah.
I'm gonna be in that area soon enough.
Until she gotta pay
You
the
are.
taxes out here, then she gonna want to run back to Wisconsin.
Welcome to the We Got Problems podcast with co-hosts Curtis G. Martin, Rhonda L Brown, and Caliph Johnson Sr. The one and only podcast where solutions get discussed to our community's everyday troubles. Each week, you will hear mind-blowing conversations and actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become more effective. We got problems and we got solutions.
All right, you guys, welcome to the show. This is We Got Problems, episode 39, Genealogy and Our History. And I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Caliph Johnson Sr.
Peace. How y'all doing?
I'm also here with my other co-host, Miss Rhonda L Brown.
Hey, everybody.
And we have a special guest. And we have Queen Trina Armstrong here to discuss genealogy and our history.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome. Hey, so I know we had you on the Black Masterminds once when we did an event, and I thought the information you gave was really good. And Trash, I know this one's dear to you, so I'm gonna push it over to you to start this one off.
Oh no. We're not gonna start it off with me. We're gonna let the queen introduce herself and just let them know a little bit of your history and who you are and some of your background. Just care to share?
Okay, sure. Well, my name is Trina Armstrong, and currently, just recently retired. But previously, I did teach at the university African American history, African American female identity, some intro classes, and quite a few courses just on African American history. Um, but for several years, my mother and I did a lot of research on our family. This was her thing. This started out her thing, the whole family genealogy, because we had so many stories that had been passed on through our family that some quite intriguing, actually. And so she wanted to just dig around and try to find some answers. Who did this land belong to, and who were we really? Because we had been told by some family members that we were Cherokee. Some had said we were Choctaw. And I certainly remember some experiences that I had with my grandfather as far as visiting people in a village that my family actually used to live in. I've just recently finally found the actual name of that village, Manley Village, and it looks as though that's where Indigenous people live. So I'm really excited about learning that recently. But genealogy, if you want me to go on further into this topic, actually, we're just studying our ancestry, okay? Um, as Indigenous people, I mean, we've been renamed, we've been given so many names, and we haven't done that naming. Someone else has been doing that naming for us. And so through that, a lot of things have been lost, including some of us, our heritage. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is to gather up some information as best I can. And it can be pretty daunting sometimes, especially looking at census records and all. But that was our whole goal, is just to find as much information about our family as we could, and to see if we could find any evidence. Because I went in it very open-minded, even though I had that Pan-African training and that Pan-African way of thinking.
Yes,
I tried to go in this just completely open-minded, and just I'm just going to dig and I'm going to find what I find, you know. So,
Yes, ma'am. So
yeah.
for me, I'll start when, everyone has their history from what their parents gave them or whatever. So with me, I had my ancestry, what my mother told me about my grandmother, and my father told me about his parents. So I had my history that was given to me from my parents. And when I went to go, it started off with my son's kindergarten. He had to write a paper on his heritage, a heritage paper, and he's at a very at the time he was at a very multicultural, diverse school in LA County, and it has so many different nationalities. And most of us, we look at each other and they call us African Americans, and they want us to go down that trail and what the Africans were and who they were, and give history and lineage of that, and how far back can you go to slavery, and us being detached from our actual ancestry. So when I went in there, I went in like open-minded, like you said, to try and find a lineage for my children. And the history that I got, it was just so, it was skewed, because I know my father, his mother was full-blooded Cherokee from my father's side, and on my grandmother's side, on my mother's side, my grandmother on my mother's side was full-blooded Choctaw Indian. And I know that from just the lineage of my parents telling me, and we come from like old souls. My father was born in 25, and his father was 100 years old when he passed. So it wasn't like a lot of different, you know what I mean? It was that was the next couple hundred years. When you start talking about into the 1800s, everything just got lost in that era. So trying to find any information on them was like pulling teeth from a lion's mouth. You can't find any paperwork. Newspaper clips is what most of the obituaries were posted in. And my father had all of these. He never really got a chance to pass that lineage down. And I have my DNA, but I'm so terrified. Me personally, they talk about ancestry.com, this person, 23andMe. They have all of these different places to collect data. It's a data collection of your DNA, and they want to go ahead and put you in this database. But me personally, I'm not so quick to jump in and give my DNA up to anybody, because I don't know what they're doing with it. So can you kind of give us a little history on how far you think, or what's some of the steps that you believe that would be the best way of going about getting information without going to these places?
Yes. Yeah, you can actually go online. There are several genealogical sites. Okay, genealogical sites. Genealogy.com, National Archive, MyHeritage, of course, Ancestry.com, and then there's also one called Find My Past, PAST. Now, there's also, and this is one of my goals, I would say within the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully, I would like to go visit this place, the Family Search Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Since 1894, this center has been operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church.
Yes, ma'am.
And this center was formerly called the Genealogical Society of Utah. So I was kind of interested in, like, why would these Mormons even be interested in gathering people's family information? So I did a little more research. And it appears that this is just a part of their belief system, you could say. Believing that families are still together even after this life. And so in order to keep them a part of this life, then you research them, find out who these people were, it's somewhat of an, for lack of a better term, an ancestral type worship, which is just so familiar to me because that's what my people believe in, that told me about our indigenous ancestors. Okay. But so the Mormons, they were just really into gathering this data. I know that during my research, I find that there sure were a lot of libraries that caught on fire. There sure were a lot of vital records offices that caught on fire. And so a lot of your information may be hard to get. But from what I understand, this is one of the best places to get information. Now, you can work with them online, or you can actually go there in person, and they'll have a representative to help you, point you in the right direction to show you hopefully where you can get more of your family information. So
And
that's what I'd
that,
like to do. Huh?
and you said that's in Utah?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Salt
So,
Lake
so,
City, Utah.
so do you think these Mormons keeping everybody history so that it can kind of give some credibility to them keeping their own as well, because they kept everything around them as well?
Perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, it's something that they've just been doing like for ages. Well, at least since what? It said 1894.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
At least since 1894. Um, yeah, so that's another resource. On Ancestry.com, I have found that they have opened up some other areas of research, like for instance, the slave census record.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I guess you would have to do some research though first, unless you know the area to look in. That was an issue that I had because no one had told me that Clave Tig was from Alabama. I never knew that. I just thought our family was in Tennessee. They've always been in Tennessee. But as I started digging, and I ran into the slave census record, actually found him and his mother on the slave census record. I tell you something that's been enlightening to me since I've done this research is to see just how many of us were able to purchase each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen some records. I mean, the so-called slave owner is identified as Black. Okay. And I mean, there's records and records and records. And these were their family members that they would purchase. So that was kind of mind-boggling to me, just to see the amount of them, because it's just records and records and records of these people. And then I go trace these people to see what nationality they are, and they're listed as Black or Negro.
And you found all that in the slave census records?
Slave census records. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. The other thing that was mind blowing to me were the number of people who were kidnapped. It was a big deal to, I guess, for some white supremacists to go in areas where there were free Blacks, so-called free Blacks, and kidnap them and take them back into slavery. That was a really common thing. And I think that's may have been what happened to Clay, my great-great-great-grandfather's mother. I think that may have been what had happened to her, because I did find her on a census in Virginia. And the story was always told that Clave's mother was sold into slavery and was taken to Virginia. And Clave, at the age of like 9 years old, went and found her and brought her back, brought her to Tennessee. And there is a time when she is not showing in Alabama or in Tennessee. And then on another census, she's back. I see her again.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. Things like that is just like, oh wow, I just wish I had so much more information. And really wish, sometimes like I wish, those teenage years when I was around some of these people that were still alive, I just sat down and started talking to them and asking them questions, But, as a teenager, you don't think about doing anything. At least I didn't, didn't think about sitting down and asking these people, why do you speak this language? And why? I mean, I have aunts and uncles who could like sit on their hair, and I just thought, that is so cool. Like, I don't see people like you, in Nashville. We actually lived in Nashville, but my family had a farm in Paris, Tennessee. And so we would go to Paris, Tennessee, several times a year. And in the summer, sometimes we'd spend nearly the whole summer down there. So was around all these people, and it was just a stark difference from that life. And then when we would go back to Nashville, I also wanted to say too, that reminds me that, I'm one of those baby boomers. Okay. So our schools weren't integrated until I was in the 8th grade. So from 1st grade to 7th grade, all I had were teachers that looked like me. And besides the math book, I remember we had a math book and we had a geography book because it was real important. They felt it was real important that we knew geography as best we could, that was just a really important thing to know. But there was no books to teach us about our heritage, So the teachers taught us that. It wasn't until integration that this whole African American thing even came up. Because we were colored, we were Negro, and we were Black. But this African American thing, that, we in the South anyway, and I'm just talking from someone who was a child growing up in the South, that African American thing didn't come up till later on, and we're like, ooh, Africa.
Mm-hmm. So do you think your education was stunted after integration?
Oh, definitely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was stunted, our self-esteem. Because we were proud until they put us on those buses and bussed us all the way across town. And the bus pulled up the first day of school, and I hear all these white students and parents standing there with signs and stuff talking about niggas go home, niggas, we don't want you here, Yeah.
And y'all just think you're gonna be here either way.
Right. Because we had athletes in our neighborhood, okay? And so we all went to the local school, the neighborhood schools. We had an awesome basketball team, football team, and all that. But once they started busing, some of these guys, and girls, athletes, they could no longer participate. How they gonna get home from practice? The white coaches weren't gonna put no Black children in their cars and take them all the way across town, taking them home. So we lost some of that. We lost a lot.
A lot more than we can ever gain back.
Yeah. But yeah, we weren't taught this African American and stuff African American stuff until way later on. And you had mentioned about the whole education, Pan-African education. I used to want to just kick myself, like, oh God, you spent all this time, learning all this stuff about African American history and Pan-African and and people didn't even identify as that. But I don't do that anymore. Don't kick myself about that anymore. Because I realized in this research that there's real close correlations with Indigenous people and Black people.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? I have to ask you a question before you go any farther.
Okay.
What is the difference from your perspective with Indigenous people and African people? Because we have like some first generation Africans here now, and we have second generation Africans here today, and they don't identify with us. Like a melanated man or a female from here, I know some Africans that do not identify with us, and we don't have a connection with them at all. And they are very proud of their heritage and their nationalities. And we are the only nation allegedly without a nationality. The melanated people here in the Americas, the North Americas, do not identify with any other nationality. So what's the difference in the two from your perspective?
I think that there are indigenous people.
Yes, ma'am.
And there are African.
Okay. So when you say Africans, straight from the motherland is what you're saying. And they do not identify, maybe they're from Uganda, Nigeria, the Congo, Tanzania.
Because most of them, they don't even identify as African, really. People who are from Africa, they are, like you said, they're Ghanaians or they're Nigerians or they don't identify as African. They identify by where they're from. So I identify from where I'm from.
It seems like that's a term they put so to keep us confused as well. If we call all of them Africans and put them in one boat, then we go in that boat as well, right?
Yeah, it's all to confuse you. It's all to confuse. If you take most of the information that we've been taught and just turn it around, so instead of 10 to 12 million Africans that were brought over here into slavery, it was far less than that.
Yeah.
Far less than that. I think the majority of them went to the Caribbeans anyway. And they don't even tell you about the indigenous people that they enslaved and sent over there and sent to the continent of Africa. It's not a whole lot of information or people that are willing to discuss that. But that was happening as well. It's like we've been learning everything in reverse, I think that the indigenous people here on American soil, or North American soil, I think that they were probably the first here. I know that there are mounds. Are you all familiar with the mounds? They call them mounds, M-O-U-N-D-S.
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar.
Some are. They're all over. They're all over the United States. They were built by indigenous people. If you just followed the Mississippi, you can start from the very top of it all the way down, and there are mounds. You can still visit some of these. There's some in the Memphis, Tennessee area, Mississippi. Yeah. And a lot of these are older than the pyramids. Okay. So
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Cause I
yeah,
follow this guy that he talks about. We was taught everything in the reverse as well,
yeah.
and he actually goes far as he's been buying documents from different
Oh
places,
yeah,
and he's buying documents at 20,000 a pop, and he's trying to
yeah.
prove the records. And he was saying that why is it no slave ships of record? Right, like you have all these
Right.
items that's there, but you don't have slave ships. They have yet to find
Yeah.
one, right? The pieces of
Well,
one.
yeah. Now they supposedly they just found well they didn't just find it, but they have just announced officially that it is a slave ship. Uh, hang on a second, I'm gonna tell you the name of it. Starts with a C. It's in Alabama. Okay, yeah. May 2019, the Alabama Historical. Uh-oh, sorry, I touched something in it. Went away. Okay, the Alabama Historical Commission announced that remnants of a ship found along. Yeah, like that can mean a lot of stuff. Okay, this could be a remnant. They announced that remnants of a ship found along the Mobile River near 12 Mile Island and just north of the Mobile Bay Delta are confirmed. And the name of the slave ship supposedly is Clotilda, Clotilda. And they have since, just this year, have now listed this wreck site in the National Register. Okay.
But it's remnants. Like it could be like, how do you even get the whole name of it?
Right.
For one. And if it's remnants, how do you even know it was a ship? It could have been.
It could have been a house.
A sign on top of a door.
It could have been a tree.
Right.
And then it could have been a ship for something other than slavery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have to put something out there because there are a lot of people asking a lot of questions. So
yeah, but even still, if they're gonna stick to this 10 to 12 million Africans that were brought over here, then there should have been a whole lot more remnants.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? We
gotta have more remnants than that.
We yeah. I mean, there's things in museums that are older than slave ships.
Yeah.
They're in museums.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah, right. So, well, that's another.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
how deep are we going here? Hold on. How deep are we going here? Y'all start big.
Now, I also. Listen. No, let's hold up now. But these slave ships, it would take a lot of lumber to build. What I read in one article, they was saying, it was 30 to 40,000 slave ships. I'm like, people, where did all this lumber come from? So they said, well, the Scandinavians. So I went over there and I said, what's the history of lumber? I'm looking for large quantities of areas cleared off. I found none of that. They said different other places over in Europe. And I looked at those. I find no evidence of this mass. It would have to have been mass production of these so-called slave ships.
Boats.
It didn't happen.
In order to get these boats, exactly. Where did these boats go, and where did they come from?
Right. And where are they now? Yeah.
Who made money off of these ships? Because these ships had to be sold, so it should be record documentation of the ships or the lumber or the rivets or something being sold. Something has to be documented because it hasn't been that long ago.
So what is called when you do the port records, like when you coming through ports. And then you have to show your log, or you have to log everything that you have. So So Dane Calloway, the guy who I was telling you guys about, he talks about how he go back and search all those records, and you have very few records of people coming over. Like they have to put their cargo, like you said, trash the cargo, how many people they bring in, and it never was no mass amount of people that they were bringing, because they had to document that, because they still was making money off of ships coming in and out, and that's how they made money.
And they have documentation of what they were making money off of, but they don't have documentation of the bodies.
They don't have the documentation. That makes me believe we were already here.
Right.
But see, they don't want you to think that.
No, no, they don't. That because this whole Pan-African thing, this is, I mean, they made so much money. They made so much money off of this, you know, from the white eugenicists coming out of Columbia State, who's that? France Boas, Melville Herskovitz. These were the Jewish guys who were the creators, I guess you could say, of this kind of pseudoscience. You know, because the thing was, they had to prove that, first of all, that we weren't human. You know, so they put us through all of these things, measuring your skulls and the size of your eye sockets and all this kind of stuff. You know, just trying to show, see how different it is from the European. You know, they're less intelligent. You know, they tried all types of things. You know about the world fairs that they would hold. It was kind of like an Olympics. They would hold it in a different country every 10 years or so. But instead of a sports type theme, it would be like science. You know, the Russians would be there with whatever their latest inventions were, and you'd have all these people, and they'd come to these world fairs, and they always had caged indigenous people, also a part of these world fairs. You know, I mean, it was, you had to continue to dehumanize these people in order to justify how you treat them, you know? So, I mean, it blows my mind to know that they actually had us in cages as exhibits, and even in zoos. You know, there was a African guy that they put him in the zoo, put him in the cage with the monkeys. And I mean, he lived with them for years before I think he committed suicide. But yeah, it was just, you know, it's like I told.
Oh my goodness, this is such a hard topic to talk about.
Yeah, I told some students once. I was like, you know, I said, when I say Iranian, what do you think of? What's the first thing pops in your mind? I said Iranian. They said terrorists. I said exactly. I said, so that's exactly how they did the indigenous people. When they said, when you hear the word, first of all, they renamed them, started calling them Indians. But when you hear that, then first thing you think of savagery, you know, barbaric, you know, running around shirtless, scalping people, you know. So they had to dehumanize it. And so that's what they've done with indigenous people. Dehumanize you, and all for pretty much to take your land. And I mean, they had a field day, and they've had a field day with that. You know, and then
exactly what they did. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they just kept establishing laws to support it. They just kept establishing laws to support it. You all have heard of the $5 Indians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where these people just, I mean, it was just,
their scalp off.
It was just, So,
okay, this is a hard topic to talk about, but I know you have a ton of information. I think it was called Red Eye. it was a chapter called Red Eye that really went deep into the history of what the actual timeline of when they first landed in the North Americas and how they went about progressing with the mass extermination of the indigenous man and woman here. And can you kind of like chronologically go back as far as your research goes and kind of give us a little light on that timeline on how it went and from what point did it start to change? Because I know that's where a lot of stuff gets lost in the translation as far as the timeline.
Yeah.
So with your research, do you care?
No, I don't, man. I wish that I was better astute with the with dates. Because a
like
lot
a
of
general
things
area, like not like
a lot of things happen.
1772, but like it's a general time period in the area when the information started getting skewed and where like how it progressed.
Well, land, basically, indigenous people were offered various things for their land. It's not all monetary, but they were offered various things for their land. Also, whatever's happening there was happening then. They would come over and infiltrate, pretend to be your friend, spying to see what you all are doing, where your resources are, that kind of thing. Interracial relationships. Same things is happening now. Nothing different. Just infiltrating, or making friends with an indigenous person and convincing them to be the ears, the eyes and ears, kind of thing. I mean, those things.
Why we frown on snitching so bad right now in our community?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same old line, pretty much. And after so many years of, well, we'll let them have this much land or this much, or just beating them down to where they really didn't have much of a choice. You've killed off most of them, either through war or disease. Because don't forget that they brought disease and it wiped out a lot of people. So it was the same tactics that have always been used, pretty much. Until they had them all lined up. The ones that were left had them lined up and marched them from the south to Oklahoma, Trail of Tears. It's. I mean, basically, it was the same things that we do to each other now.
So with your research, I know you've been researching your family history. Is there a point where you feel like you've reached there are no more records? Because a lot of them have been destroyed, not kept. They don't, you can only go back so far. Do you feel like you've hit a wall?
Not quite. Not yet. I'm holding on to hope. And I'm gonna make my way to Utah. I think I might, I'm not gonna convince myself I'll hit the mother lode there, but I'm hoping that I would just be able to add to the information that I already have. Just, find some other things. Because at some point, there's nothing. you know, when I get to Clave's mother, Mariah, who was a slave, and she was a slave to at least 3 different plantations. The third one was when she had my great grandfather. So
what year was that? What years are you in?
Okay, so Mariah was born somewhere around 1826.
Wow.
1826, 27, something like that. And she died somewhere around 1896. Then her son, Clay, he was born 1850. I'm trying to find out right now. I'm supposed to talk to a lady tomorrow at Henry County Records because I want to know who had the land that Clay owned before him. Like who did he buy it from, or who did he, get it from? Because my Pan-African teaching was that it wasn't no slaves owning land. It wasn't no black people owning land. In the 1800s, early 1800s. Slavery didn't even end till 1864. But this man and a whole bunch of other people, because when you go on, that's the other thing too. When you look at the census records for your folks, look at the people that live near them too. Look at it, could be other relatives. They'll have their addresses, or depending on how far back it is, a lot number or something. Because some of these properties, that wasn't like a real address, like rural route box 8,
right,
or something like that. But yeah, look at the people that are near your folks, because they may, be relatives, or you may be able to find some other information. But that's what I'm trying to find out, is where Clay got this land from, because he had 9 sons and he gave all of them 10 acres each. And then one of those sons, my great grandfather, he had 8 or 9 sons and he gave them 10 acres each. And so, yeah, that's what was y'all doing? What was he?
Y'all was out here making big business plays. Hold
where
on,
did
we
he?
like that.
I mean, they were farmers. They sold a lot of meats and produce and that kind of thing. But yeah, I want to know where this initial land came from. Now, I did find clay in this white man's will, and I'm trying to find out what the relationship is with him. He left Clay farm equipment, some houseware stuff, furniture. That's the only thing. The other thing that's kind of suspicious about that will is that the last 3 or 4 pages are not legible. So I don't know if the land came from this guy. I don't know, but I'm researching that too.
So
you're muted,
Curtis.
Oh.
So, no, I was just thinking like maybe they gave him half of his land and took half or something. Why it's not legible?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you've been finding people, right? You've been seeing the people that's been out here that's tracing their history back, and right here in California, some people just got some land. I think in Hermosa.
Yeah, in the beach area.
Right,
yeah,
like they just got some land back that their family was tricked out of, or something, or something
happened. They took it from them. It wasn't no tricked out of. They just took it out and made them force them to move.
Eminent domain.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used that eminent domain and took that land. Yeah.
This is such a
which
sad topic.
again, that's an old tactic that it's an old tactic they've always used. In the when they started redlining Remember they started redlining black neighborhoods, putting these freeways and interstates through them. And a lot of those people didn't get paid for their homes. It was eminent domain.
All right.
They just took it.
It often make me think, like, I've been thinking like this for a few years. Everybody keep talking about reparations, and I feel like they know they can't give us reparations because most of us
they'll
is
have to
here
leave the
already.
country.
No,
because they'll have to leave the country.
But most
They'll
of
have
us
to leave the
here
country.
already. So how could you pay somebody for being a slave when all of us wasn't slaves, and then they have to start telling the truth?
But you know what they had to do with the Indians? They had to give them they paid if you're a natural native here, they literally give you a check every month. And that's how they keep the Indians on the reservations or the natives on the reservations, because they give them a check to stay there. So they don't come back and demand their land that's rightfully theirs.
But when we talking about those people, though, that's when you talk about let's go deeper and deeper. Those people are not real natives to here.
They are not.
From my understanding,
the Choctaws and
so you might have the names right, but the people are not
but the people.
Yeah, the names
people
could be
who are
right.
saying that. Because listen, I was in Vallejo, California, a few years back, and I don't know if it was online or something, but I found out about this powwow that they were having. I was like, oh, I hadn't been to a powwow in a long time, so I got ready and went on down to the powwow. I have never seen so many blonde-haired
Choctaw Indians.
Choctaw. Yes. I was just, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, is this a joke or what? But no, they had a whole regalia on. Doing the ghost dance. I mean, yeah. And I'm like, I had to leave. I was like, this is
so
really bad.
we're talking about here now. We're talking about the Americas. Isn't it a lot of other records of, like, in Egypt? You see the Egyptians, like, those don't look like the people of the land of Africa. If you look at more and more Egyptians, they look, like you said, more Arab to me. And like, so this isn't the only place that the land has been stolen by the non-melanated person. So like, how far do we need to go back to really tap into our ancestry? Like, because that's what I ended up eventually doing. When it came down to the history of my child, opposed to just putting some slavery stuff on there and our people came from this part of Mississippi or this part of Texas, I ended up going back to Tanzania, and I went back to the Hazabi and the people of the sun people. And that's where I ended up doing the research from, so I can give a more factual history of Homo sapiens, the mankind in general, before I tried to give just one small region of the world where we can track back to, because it's so many brick walls there that we can't really track our native people. And if you want to go back to the beginning of Homo sapien, that's where we started from. Scientific Eve, what they called her. So my question would be, how far? You said you got back to the 18s. Like, it's so much more history past the 18s. How do we start to really get a sense of who we are and get an understanding of who we are as a melanated people in this country? Where should we really try and track back to? How far should we go back? And where will we be comfortable knowing who we are to actually be able to be proud of what we see in these mirrors?
That was a really good question.
I told you this. what you bring to the table is invaluable, Queen. Like your
that's
information is invaluable. I was such a sponge during your presentation. I fell asleep on a couple of
oh,
our stuff. I can't even lie. I dozed off throughout the 24 hours, but your session was one that just had me lit up the whole time. So I was waiting for this interview. I really was.
oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I ask myself those things a lot. Um, you know, I don't know. I go back and forth because part of me sometimes think that right now in the climate that we're in right now, um, that unity, whether you're identifying as Indigenous or you're identifying as African American, um, there's a part of me sometimes that feels like that unity would be so much more valuable to us right now. If we
Yes,
could
ma'am.
all, what they call, get on code,
Yes, ma'am.
and be about recreating, because we've done this before. We've had Tulsa's, we've had, our Black Wall Streets, we've had all of those. We've done it before. We can do it again. Um, but our reliance, we've become so dependent on everything outside of ourselves. So we would have to first start trying to make strides in becoming more self-sufficient,
Yes, ma'am.
so that we won't have to rely on others. Um, and I grew up in that. I grew up in that community where just about everybody on our street had a garden. Okay. And our tomatoes were known to be big, juicy, like everybody loved our tomatoes. We trade our tomatoes with Miss Martha down the street because she's got onions and asparagus, and she's got, and then we had the black farmers. They would come into town on Saturdays. We call it the market man, and he'd have an old truck, but it's full of produce, it's loaded down in the back. And he'd come through, and that's where you got your produce. He'd have smoked meat on there, or whatever. Um, we had there was a guy in our neighborhood that made men's suits. There was another guy that made men's shoes. Then you had your seamstress that made women's clothes and women's hats, and I mean, we were able to use our own resources to build our own economy. And I just think that until we start trying to now don't get me wrong, we're not going to be able to unite with everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody that looks like us.
Same for us.
But for those that we can, I'm thinking that would certainly be a good start. To not be so dependent upon these systems that are outside of us. I've been looking at some of these people that are living off the grid, and and
Yes,
they are learning how to purify their own water, and I mean, it's
yes, ma'am.
just maybe we just got to go back to our roots.
Okay. So my question is identity now, because until we know who we are, we have a struggle to ever be able to build anyone. Identity. Someone called me and asked me the other day, what do I identify as? And my answer was human. I'm human. Don't call me African or of Hispanic. Don't call me a non-melanated Caucasian. Don't call me any of those titles that you give to divide us. So, what do you think a uniform identity would be in order to kind of get us moving in a direction that actually makes sense from your perspective?
Yeah. That's a very good question. You know, there's a group that I follow sometimes on YouTube. It's called African Americans Ain't African. And they use the term Amerindian. Okay. It's kind of like American and Indian put together, I guess. They have some really good videos too. If you not watch them, African Americans Ain't African. Yeah, I don't know what we would call ourselves. But I think that survival right now is the most important thing. We can come up with some names. You know, we can be Group X. It doesn't matter. You know, but I think first and foremost is getting on code. You know, that's just my opinion on that.
Yes,
so if we go back to our roots, and I know I've discussed this with you before. I know you've done a lot of research into your family history. How much more beneficial would it have been if, let's say, your great grandmother had a book and had everything written down, from everything, all the stories that she knew and that she heard, and stuff from her life as well?
Yes, that would have just been major. That would have been beautiful. What a gift. What a gift that would have been. I have some of that in pictures. My family was real big on pictures. So I do have some of that in pictures. I have a picture of Clay.
Wow.
You know, the one born. Yeah, I have a picture of him and his wife.
I have a picture of my grandfather, and it's so old. It's like a newspaper clip, and I keep it really close to my heart because my grandfather was 100 when he passed, and like I said, we go back kind of interesting. And my sister, she did something for my dad. I'm gonna go ahead and try and locate it while we're talking. I just want to show you. It kind of sent chills through my body. The power of technology. So y'all can go. I don't want to sit there holding up looking.
My question is: do you think, like, with what with the research and stuff you're doing now, like with this generation, whoever's watching, you know, do you think they should write a book or have a book, a family book?
Yeah, I think so. Just documenting family events. Yeah, I would have loved to have known, you know, gotten so much more information from them. I was just thinking about my grandfather's sisters. He had 3 sisters. He was the only boy. But he had 3 sisters, and I know those women had some stories. I mean, I just know they did. I remember seeing these beautiful quilts that they would make, baskets, hand woven baskets. They just sit on the porch. And then I had one aunt. She smoked a corncob pipe. They used to call her Frisky. because it, you know, women, you know, there was some point in history where if women did smoke, they didn't do it in public. You know, you did that behind closed doors. And she'd sit out on her front porch with hers, you know. But yeah, I think that if someone was making a book, a journal some of your family accounts, births, just any type of accomplishments, achievements in life, or disappointments in life. I would love to have had a book like that to really learn some history, because the thing that I got from my grandfather was, we're a Cherokee, but we do not talk about it. You do not tell anybody. People have gotten hurt, killed, burned off their land. He would be in tears sometimes telling me that. He just was drilling it in me. We don't talk about it. We don't discuss it. You put our lives in jeopardy. So yeah.
Okay, so my sister, she found my dad enlisted in the Navy when he was 17. So she had a picture of him made and had it.
Oh wow.
To move.
Oh wow.
Wow. So that was his enlisting picture when he enlisted in the Navy. So yeah, so the power of technology, I was going to get one done of my grandfather as well. Just keeping up as much history as I can pass down. Yeah, just keeping up as much history as I can pass down to my son.
And history and look, recipes and like herbal remedies. Like if we would have had them now, especially now, like we wouldn't even be in half the situations we're in.
Yeah, because my folks didn't go to a doctor. Now there was what did they call him? Well, they called him a seer. There was a guy that's down there in Paris, Tennessee. He was a seer, but you could go to him for different things. He mix up ointments and all kinds of remedies and stuff, natural for you.
That's how we
but
got
he
Dr.
also,
Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
That's how we got Dr. Pepper. That's how we got Dr. Pepper. It was an old tonic that they used to use and made you feel better.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm being a bit of a nerd.
No, that's cool. I never heard of that.
That's why they named it Dr. Pepper.
Oh, okay.
Learn something new every day.
And the other thing I was going to add is that, depending on how open you are, there sometimes are other ways to get information about your ancestors through different types of spirituality.
We actually just had a discussion on Akashic Records.
Oh yeah.
And communicating with your ancestors.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. I'm just gonna share this one little, it's just a little bit.
You got all
because
night. Talk about it.
It is so phenomenal. Okay, so there's a lady that or a blog talk show that I've been listening to since probably 2003 or 4 or something like that. And I told my daughter about it, I told Lashika about it. And so then she started listening to it. She's like, "Ooh, this woman is really deep." And it's just a variety of different type of spiritual practices, like maybe just going on a meditation, a quest, and you go on this quest with her, and when you come out of it, you're more relaxed, you're calmer, just so my mother had just passed. In fact, it was the night before her I guess for lack of better words, funeral. It wasn't really a funeral, but her homegoing or whatever. And this show was coming on that night, and we said, "Oh, let's listen to it." And so we listened to it, and then the host said, "You can call in if you want." And so we were like, "Let's call in and see if maybe, my mother has some words for us or something. Let's just see what happens, And so we called in, and immediately the lady started coughing. She's just, she's like, oh my God. And she's just coughing. Well, my mother was a heavy, heavy smoker. Now this lady, she didn't know my mother from Adam, okay? But she went on to tell us some things about my mother. Some we knew, some we didn't know. But it was helpful. It was helpful. And that's my point, is that there are some non-traditional ways sometimes that you may also be able to get information.
But it probably used to be traditional.
I was gonna say the same thing. We so tricked into until they tell us stuff is the medicines that used to be practiced. Like even when you think about Dr. Sebi, right? Like they willing to say Dr. Sebi is a quack job, right? But
and
anyway.
like voodoo and voodoo,
right. That's true.
That's what got us alive that kept us alive for eons and centuries upon centuries before we got into this little realm of technology where they swear that this is the right way, Western medicines, but our ancestors have been living for thousands of years on this planet using these same traditions and these same tactics to keep us alive. And you can't tell me that it got my great-great-great-grand and kept them and my great-great-grandfather here, and now it's wrong for me.
Yeah. And the seers, they used to help the farmers too, because they could tell you, kind of like that almanac, they kind of tell you like, no, this is the best time to plant it. This is the best time to plant this, or this, and they were held in high regard, in the indigenous community.
Wow,
elders anyway. What'd you say, Curtis?
I said, no, that's pretty good. I'm loving the information.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of books, if you all are interested. You may have already read some of these. One is called Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage. It's by William Katz, Katz. There's another one called The Indian Slave Trade, The Rise of the English Empire in the American South. It's called The Indian Slave Trade, The Rise of the English Empire in the American South, 1670 to 1717. So those are a couple of books. There's, I know we had mentioned African Americans Ain't African on YouTube, and Dane Calloway's I'm Just Here to Make You Think. Yeah. There's also one called 1000 Go Head. It's the number 1000 Go, HEAD. And he has some pretty interesting videos as well on his site.
This has been amazing. Amazing.
Oh,
I couldn't wait for this interview. I couldn't wait for this one. I was excited for this one. I was, no offense to anybody else, I greatly appreciate all of our guests that come on, but this conversation was dear and near to my heart. I can't thank you enough, just off of the openness that you share with, the information that you give. This is priceless to me, and I know our viewers are gonna really, really hold this interview in high regard. And if they don't, I don't care. I do. This is powerful. This was a powerful
thank you,
one for me.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm kind of looking at this. I'm gonna have some friends and some colleagues and former colleagues to watch this as well, and this is gonna be my coming out. This is my coming out.
So that means you're coming back. That means you're coming back.
That means that my Pan-African, and I've got some really good friends. Maybe we can still continue to be friends, but I've got some that are really, really, I mean, they Pan-African through and through. And this is going to upset. I know one in particular. She's going to really be upset. And of course, some former professors, I'm sure too. But get over.
On, they welcome.
Okay.
They welcome to come on. Come on. We'll listen to your perspective. Anybody who wants to come on, we're definitely open to listening to your perspective. But you can't.
It's not just listen; it's having a conversation, and that's what we have to get used to: is actually having the conversations instead of, oh, well, you don't think the way I think, so I'm gonna, put a wall up. Like, no, we need to have these conversations.
No, these conversations definitely need to be had, especially with our younger generation, so they don't lose even more information, right? Because we, like Rhonda, you mentioned the books.
Yeah, and I mean, this is difficult. This was it was difficult for me to. I mean, I invested a whole lot of time and years, and and work, and I mean, I grew up in a Pan-Africanist home. My stepfather taught sociology at Tuskegee Institute, it was called back then. And then I guess they offered him more money at Florida A&M. So then he transferred to Florida A&M. We moved to Tallahassee. And Julian Bond came to our house for dinner. He would have conversations with various people. He and my mom, this is my stepfather and my mom. They were in several marches while we lived in Tuskegee, and they marched in Birmingham and Montgomery, so, I mean, I wrote a letter to Angela Davis when she was incarcerated, telling her she's got my support. I was like 9 years old, telling her she's got my support. I asked my mom for the black leather jacket with the, I wanted the tam, and she was like, "Ain't no way in the world," But I was seeing those baby Panthers, like when they would show the news, California news or Oakland news, and you see these little children with their little jackets on, and they, and I was like, yes, I want. So I was all about, Black Power and that kind of thing, but it's going to be some people that are upset, but it was all about finding the truth. It was all about finding the truth, and I invested a lot in my education, only to find that my education was not truthful. So it's this wasn't easy. So that's why I said I'm coming out. Okay.
We're lucky to have you, Queen. We are so blessed to truly be able to sit down in this conversation. And I implore that all of the young people get with the elders in their family and record, and document as much information about your family as you can. So when your children are going to look for the information, they have some place to start.
All right, good stuff. How about you, Rhonda?
Definitely listen to the stories, talk to your elders. Like, hey, you only have so much time, and it's better to hear the stories out of their mouth. I mean, a book is good. Yes, we all need to have a family book, but hearing those stories straight from your elders is like, it puts you right there.
Exactly.
So I thank you.
Thank you all for having me.
Yes,
thank you. I appreciate you all and the work that you're doing. This is really good, work that you all are doing. It's informing people,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, you guys, and this is We Got Problems, and we out.